It's on.
Oh, great. Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Fine Arts Work Center. I'm Michael Roberts, and after last night's incredible, beautiful program and the moving stories you heard of our 6 honorees, I have never been more proud to be the executive director of this wonderful organization. So let's give a hand to the Fine Arts Work Center. Each and every one of you is in this room now because you've stepped up in a major way to help us, and we are deeply, profoundly grateful. You're the ones that keep the creative fires burning in this place every year along, of course, with the creators themselves, but we are so dependent on the generosity and kindness of all the people here, and we thank you. With your generosity, I am more confident than ever that the Fine Arts Work Center will continue to flourish for another half-century and beyond. So, as soon as we learned that we'd be fortunate enough to host Ai Weiwei this weekend, I knew who I wanted to be in conversation with him. Long before Christopher Lyon became a good personal friend, I followed his Washington byline in the New York Times in the 1970s. Then I heard him as anchor on WGBH's 10 o'clock news in the 1980s, where he brought a new level of seriousness and intelligence to local news coverage. He found critical and popular acclaim in the 1990s as the host of WBUR's The Connection, a nationally syndicated NPR radio program. In 1999, he made history by creating the world's first podcast, sparking a chain reaction that's generated a universe of independent auditory journalists, not of equal value, but nevertheless extraordinary. Revolution in communications. Christopher has since launched what I think is the best program of interviews and conversation on the air today, Radio Open Source, which you can hear on WBUR and other NPR stations. On Open Source, Lydon has featured such esteemed guests as scholar and social critic Noam Chomsky, journalist and memoirist Joan Didion, and novelist Philip Roth, among many, many more of the best and most intelligent interviews to be heard anywhere. We are delighted to have him with us today. You had a brief introduction last night to our guest of honor, the internationally renowned artist and activist Ai Weiwei. The extraordinary range of his interests and accomplishments as architect, curator, and filmmaker really evokes the Italian Renaissance. But as you see in his disturbing and powerful sculptural installation, Rebar and Case, which is now, of course, in Fox Hudson D. Walker Gallery, his artistic concerns are as urgent and contemporary as today's headlines. Rebar and Case draws on the devastating 2008 earthquake in Sichuan province in China, which left 70,000 casualties, including over 5,000 student deaths. In the tragedy's aftermath, the government failed to release the names and numbers of the victims, and in response, Ai Weiwei organized a citizens' investigation which set out to identify each individual child. The Work Center is particularly honored to present this work during the 10-year anniversary this year of the earthquake in 2008. We're also pleased to present Human Flow a little later this afternoon, Ai Weiwei's examination of the staggering scale of the refugee crisis worldwide and its profound personal impact. Over the course of 1 year in 23 countries, he followed a chain of urgent human stories that stretched across the globe, including Afghanistan, France, Greece, Germany, and Iraq. Additional notable installations by Ai Weiwei have included Sunflower Seeds from 2010 at the Tate Modern, where he scattered 100 million porcelain seeds hand-painted by 1,600 Chinese artisans. His infamous Han Dynasty urn with Coca-Cola logo from 1993, and the Bird's Nest Stadium for Beijing's 2008 Olympics, where he served as artistic design consultant. Please welcome Christopher Lyon and Ai Weiwei.
already seen our demonstration of the theme. If you don't like the chair you're sitting in, you can decide. Get another one. That's sort of the text. Such a privilege to be on stage at Ai Weiwei in Provincetown. Provincetown, as you know, is a perfectly typical American town. Pretty much every town in America. But we're delighted that you're here. We're in fact resuming a conversation that we began in Beijing 4 years ago. Can I tell the people that at the end of that, we talked about a lot of things, and Ai Weiwei said to me, he said, you know, you made me look kind of like a grumpy guy, a complainer, a critic. He said, next time we should, I don't know, maybe talk about food or sex or anything. So this is part 2 of the conversation. A whole lot has changed since 2004. Ai Weiwei has had his passport returned. He has been liberated to the world in a certain sense. He's moved to Berlin. Donald Trump has moved to the White House. 65 million people are trying out there on water, in the woods, trying to move someplace. But would you begin, Ai Weiwei, telling your view, what's changed in 4 years that I've seen you?
Well, the number is 65 already outdated now. The official number is 68.5 million people. So you see that 3.5 million people just added since last year. Since I constantly living in a condition changing and switching from one situation to another, so for me it's a very normal condition. It's not I have no way to say what is not changed. It's always changing in my life from the beginning, and not necessarily I would plan it. I just follow like a river flows, and it leads me to very different conditions and different angles to look at what is the mountains, rivers, and all those fields. And today I'm just floating to this very normal town here. So I'll sit here. I hope we can just have some chat.
Speak a little bit about your studio. Ai Weiwei has this wonderful garden and house and studio. I still remember that marvelous wooden table that we sat at, and people busy all around it. Everything is paradoxical in Ai Weiwei's world. He is, as you know, obviously a dissident, an activist. At the same time, it's hard to imagine really, he is a tremendous hero in China. And he is both the target of the government, but he is also their proudest, not representative, but he is the most famous man in China, maybe after Xi Jinping, but I think maybe Ai Weiwei has that stand. But anyway, there's such a paradox about what you even told me then about the Chinese people, Chinese culture being ruined in a certain way, but at the same time, Chinese people being so ingenious, so responsive, so used to breaking rules, so used to improvising. How would you describe the condition of Chinese people in the last 4 years?
Last 4 years?
Yeah, I mean, well, just as the Xi Jinping regime takes deep root,
yeah, that
surveilling everybody.
Chinese is like between breakfast and lunch. There's not much change actually. China has been like that, has same kind of struggle for past 100 years. So after Qing Dynasty, China has been at the beginning, their intellectuals trying to make some change because they are at the kind of the worst, the bottom of their history. So they decide what would make the change would be democracy and science. So they said Mr. D, that means democracy and science. So, But till today, China still not believes in both of them. It's not China still is not a democratic society. The government has has established new nations for about 70 years, but still they don't trust their people. They don't give them a chance to even see a voting ticket. The people's so-called people's nation or a people's government, but never had a chance to even give any trust to its own people. And there is no independent judicial system. The military, police, all belongs to the party, one-party system. And any people, any person who had any idea which are not on the line of the party's line will be crushed. And so my father's generation, I'm talking about the whole generation, like 500,000 of intellectuals, writers, poets, translators, school teachers, professors, whoever had a little bit ability to give any kind of critic ideas or even just opinions can be crushed for a lifetime. Many people just lost their life during this kind of political struggle. So till today, it's the same. China still not allowed anybody to raise their own voice. Two of my lawyers, both are in jail.
Two of your lawyers?
Yeah, two of my lawyers. It's very, very funny. I'm out, but one served five years, and then another served 11 years. They're human rights lawyers. But of course, police, government always found a way to put them in jail. And many of my friends still serving time or disappear or to be put in jail without trial. So basically their family, no lawyers can see them. So if you face a situation like this, whoever in such a huge society, 1.34 billion people, whoever had a little opinion or any kind of independent thinking will be crushed. So that become a history, and that made China like today, and it's completely no political ecosystem. If they don't do that, completely it will be chaotic in China. But if they do that, the complete dead. It's a dead society. Nobody trusts anybody. There's no sense of trust. And
I want you to also emphasize, you haven't given up on China, have you? Or, I think of you, among other things, as a great Chinese patriot, an heir to the great artistic tradition of outspokenness. I'm also reminded, you have a friend, Yu Hua, the writer. And I was happy to meet him again 4 years ago. He said, China is literally like the hotel room. When you get a hotel room in China, the sign on the wall very clearly says no smoking, and then there's a complimentary package of cigarettes and an ashtray right under the sign. So a certain amount of rule breaking is assumed, even under a miserable situation where your lawyers are still in jail and you're wandering the world free. Do we hope for that spark? Yeah. Still.
Yeah, China, it's because never really, nobody believed in law or the rules.
For the rules, yeah.
Yeah, even the one makes the law, they don't believe in it. So the violation is everywhere. And the corruption is everywhere, of course. And so anything that happened, China never really never even believed it to be stable. Because every day they talk about stable society, but how they never trying to establish this kind of possibility.
One more word about Yu Hua. Yu Hua is a novelist, beautiful man. He wrote the screenplay, or he wrote the novel that became a movie called To Live in America, in English. A beautiful, beautiful movie about a man living through almost 70 years of the Chinese Revolution. But he makes the point, and I think you agree with him, that the Chinese Revolution is 70 years of the same thing. It's always, there's always a new revolution: nationalist revolution, communist revolution, cultural revolution, capitalist revolution, this, that, and the other. But it's always 5 men in a small room telling billion people what to do. There's always an element of violence and threat in it. There's always a tremendous power of propaganda and mass advertising, brainwashing going on all the time. Do we see an end to this cycle? And do you see, as he does, the capitalist revolution has a lot in common with the old cultural revolution, communist revolution?
I thought today we are going to talk about food and sex. It's just getting deeper. It's not average American town would hear about the revolution and communist. So, make a quick question. Maybe I can answer it short. So, what is the question?
The question is, does this revolution have an end? Do you want to picture it as an addiction to start a new revolution?
If people don't believe it, so then that's the end of it. But the political machine has the only way to maintain, to be there is to create this kind of so-called movement, one after another. And basically those movement is in dealing with their internal problem, because still they need a big management to manage the nation. And now after globalization, their economy, their relations with Trump, with other nations, a big deal. They have to find a modern management. But with this kind of communist dictatorship, it's not possible. So the internal problem is always there. The struggle is always there. And but that has nothing to do with revolution, and nothing to do with the common people.
We'll go back to China. I'm dying to ask you about the exhibition, which the Finance Rec Center is privileged to have here, of the rebar, and the wallpaper. It's so beautiful. It's so, I touched it. I'm not sure, it doesn't say don't touch. And it was a joy to touch the
So you touch anything doesn't say don't touch. That's very dangerous.
I marvel at the marble rebar. I marvel at the finished furniture and the power of the statement. I also want to talk about the wallpaper.
That wallpaper relates to sex.
Yeah. In a funny sort of way.
Well, yeah.
Can you explain the finger?
Yes, definitely. It's a meaningful finger. It's about individuals' attitude towards all kind of powers, could be political power or economic power or cultural powers. So in the 90s, when this Cold War finished, I realized, what's next? So I feel that the individual struggle with the power will be the same. We have a different kind of, one monster disappeared, then there will be another group of monsters coming. So today, after globalization, we see all kinds of things happening, and for many of them are quite suppression, and for some it doesn't care that much. But still, we see the whole political landscape or cultural landscape even, also economic situation changing. It's a time for reshuffle, and because we are the whole condition changed. But still, individuals are very important, more important than ever. Right. To take action, to show your attitude, and to speak out, and I think it's more important than ever.
Yeah, well, you know, in the catalog, and you may have seen this elsewhere, Ai Weiwei has gone around the world giving the finger to all sorts of things. I mean, Tiananmen Square, the Vatican, the White House, and this is kind of finger selfie. It's sort of
that time selfies words is not out yet. But I do feel silly. I did all those in the 90s, you know, I think this is really silly. But sometimes the time makes it more important, more relevant.
yeah.
You know, and people take it more to say, yes, I agree with you. I say, why do you agree with me? You know, a lot of young people come to me to say, okay, we like what you do, and I didn't do anything. I just had my left hand's the finger there, you know. Because I have to use my right hand to hold my camera.
Well, no, it's very, very powerful. It's very, very inspiring. But it also reminded me of something I would have wanted to ask you anyway, which is, it reminds me of James Joyce, the writer. And I'm very glad that Michael Roberts put you in the Leonardo context, or in that. I mean, I think you're an artist for the whole world and for the whole century, and as Joyce was. But Joyce, I think of him as inventing a modern stance. When he leaves Ireland at the end of the portrait of the artist as a young man, he's basically saying, "World, I'm coming at you, and I'm going to forge on the smithy of my soul the uncreated consciousness of my race," meaning Ireland, human beings. And in your gesture, in your work, if I may be so bold, I find the same kind of, we're going to start fresh. And Joyce was saying no to his father, no to the Catholic Church, and no to the British Empire. It was sort of like, guys, it's over, I'm out of here. And we're going to make something new, which is what I sort of, why your work so fascinates me. It's for everybody, it's profound, it's deeply rooted in China history, your own history, all manner of complications, but it's very, very immediate. We get it, and we are touched by it. Is that a fair way to read some of what you're doing?
Yeah, I have to, only if I don't become so popular today. You know, of course, I always raise questions, or always ask questions. That's very annoying. But now I see the potential become quite popular, you know. So that is, for me, it's kind of alarming and become dangerous, you know. So, you know, this, which side you're on anyway. So, yeah.
Would you want to say more about, I mean, to my mind, there's so much fun and wit in turning the arm and the finger into a kind of pattern. If you were walking past it in a hurry, you think, oh, that's a pretty design. But if you stop, you'll see something. You also see a part of a head, not a whole head. How did that come to you?
Well, that's getting even deeper. Well, I think we somehow only use the part of our head anyway. You know, we are very well equipped and have a strong potential for us as a very mysterious species. But you think in the real life, in the reality, only part of our head are really working. So maybe that's the truth. So.
I want to ask you a different question about not only your art, but the condition, the technology of our public lives. 15 years ago, I was associated with something called the Berkman Center for the Internet at Harvard. And one of the big ideas in the place was that we're going to use digital technology to liberate China. If only China had Facebook or email or blogs, and the individual expressive power of every person was liberated, we could have a new world. 15 years later, it seems to me we didn't Americanize Chinese culture. We are Chinifying American culture. It is becoming so dominated by immense money and power. It's also being concentrated in the hands of, 5 engineers. If you get Mark Zuckerberg and Eric Schmidt at Google and throw in Mr. Amazon, we can see the outline of a committee that rules our expression, our politics, our thinking, our reading. Does Ai Weiwei have a general line on digital culture, social media, what it is doing for us in a liberal or illiberal way?
My experience are very limited. When I was in China, today is exactly 3 years I had my passport. So before that, I had about 20 years working in China. But in that 20 years, maybe I had 3 or 4 years, I would say, a dream-like time. I can freely use internet to get all the information and express myself. So that's all before Chinese government knows how to control the internet. So that time I have an illusion like if I post one article the next morning would have 200,000 people already reposted. So I think I can just have one person can make this revolution. They let me do that for, I even think a year longer, that would make a big difference. But of course, ended up all my blogs were shut off, and my name cannot be tapped in Chinese internet anymore, and then I ended up in detention and all kind of problem. So if you see the control of the Chinese government on internet, what you mentioned, those internet are not allowed to be in China. Google or Facebook or Twitter or Instagram, it's not allowed to be in China. So then you can see how this authoritarian society are so scared of the people who can freely change their ideas or to just show their attitude, their lifestyle, not necessarily political, but that is very scary. It's a kind of freedom it created. So I still think that internet is the most precious tool, important tool human ever created. It's the first time an individual can be called as an individual because you can freely gather the information. Nothing can stop you. The morning you turn on your phone, you see whatever happens in every corner of the world and any concerns. And also you can structure your knowledge and you can express yourself. You can freely associate with people you like or you think something in common, or you can even to create your own enemies. So those things seems very common today, but it's never happened in the human history. If a person doesn't have social status or some kind of strong background, all those information and knowledges, it's hard to establish, even for generations. So I still think this is the most possible condition for today. And of course, the government also, because they're always powerful and they always can use the technology for the control. So it's a warfare of between individual and the power. It could be political or economic power, but still, we still can expect many things will happen. Can come as a surprise. So we are really at a time miracle can happen. May not be necessarily good or what is good. Our human society are very often very short-sighted and to be suicidal, but still it's much more exciting time than before.
But so interesting, what you're saying would be, in this country, would be called digital utopianism. It's a rosy future. I can write, I can sell my song on the web, and people who like it can enjoy it, whatever. But there's so many possibilities for connection and expression in this medium. At the same time, I think in this country there's a great fall into kind of digital dystopia, the sense that the Chinese government, for one, has really openly announced that it is working on a total surveillance of every man, woman, and child in government. Identification by biometrics and in every other kind of intrusion and spying on its population. And they don't deny it. And I just wonder, has something fundamental turned, or are people going to have to seize the digital media again to their own purposes? We've also seen in our country, I mean, the unbelievable fortunes that individuals have made. A few people have used the information on Facebook to become unimaginably rich. I wonder, is there any rescuing that technology for people's control, under people's control?
Well, any tool is really depends how and who use it and how you use it. I think certainly the digital technology provide the possible liberty, and this is has a tremendous power, and things you can not even imagine, just decades ago what happened today. In terms of structure of even just the commercial world, just because basically capitalism is commercial world. So you see, almost every business changes model on the working force, on the capital, all those unthinkable structure happened. So of course there's always a problem. Nothing can really free a human being without struggle. There's always creates new problems, and all depends on how ready or how smart we are, and to use it in favor of ourselves. So
I'd love you to speak about your own move into Europe and Berlin today. But also, I'd like you to sort of tell us about the refugee crisis as an artistic challenge and what you want us to learn about it.
Well, I moved out of China exactly 3 years ago today, and
well, we should have a happy birthday.
Yeah. That time it marked. Still, the struggle is the same. I fight for very basic human rights and freedom of speech in China, in that very particular society. But of course, I've always been seen as an activist or someone against the communist region, or has done something unthinkable or brave. People always think that way. And but for myself, my condition never really changed, or my position never really changed when I come to Europe. Even before that, I has been paying attention to the refugee situation, so I cannot travel. We sent two of my studio assistants to Iraq. This is a camp in Iraq, so I want to know, who are those people, and why they in the camp, what's their future like. So we did 100 interviews, and did a lot of recording and films, and a refugee. And that's my first approach. That's 1 year before I could have my passport. So once I get into Berlin, I realized some of the refugees already come to Berlin. So I decide that Christmas Day, I decide to bring my son and my girlfriend to go to Lesbos, which is a Greece island. Maybe half of the refugees come to Europe, or more than half, are really across that little island. You know, that island is, we all know, Lesbos, it's originalized as poetic and Greece mythology. You know, that's how, you know, in the mythology, that's how this Europa, you know, the earlier time about Odyssey and Iliad, you know, those early Greek mythology. So this beautiful island is really always sunny, and you know, the water is very blue, light, kind of turquoise color. And but when you're standing on the shore, you see the boat coming one after another, you know, full babies and a lady and old lady, and someone could be 80 or 90 years old. And they're not Europeans, they are from Middle East, you know, mostly from, you know, Syria, also could be Afghanistan or Pakistan or those nations. They don't speak any, the same language. They look very different religion, but they all, day and night, they are approaching this little island, and once they arrive, you see nobody take care of them. You know, that's even more shocking. It's very shocking to see those people who gave up whatever to risk the life, because they all on this little dinghy boat. You know, the boat can take 10 people, they would have 50, 70 people, and very often you hear people lost their life in the middle of the ocean. It's just you know, the boat just flipped and the people just lost their life. Then that over 500,000 people across the border from Turkey to Greece. So that moment I decided, you know, it's very intuitional. I said, why I need to have a studio in Berlin? I should have moved my studio to Lesbos. So I called my colleague and said, just all come, you know, we start to, what we can do is to do recording. You know, it's just part of our history. I think we are in the middle of this history. And we start to do recordings. First start with my iPhones, then, you know, then we start to organize people. Then we realize the sense are much bigger than we can imagine. So we want to go to the other side of the ocean, which is Turkey, which already have over 3 million refugees. You know, the whole Europe take less than 2 million. Germany only take 1.2 million. People already become you know, such a phenomenon. But Turkey itself has 3 million people there. So then we realized we have to travel to other nations such as Lebanon, Jordan, and also Israel, Gaza, and Africa, Bangladesh, Iraq, Afghanistan, you know, Mexico. So we went to 23 nations, and visited most camps, you know, the 40 largest refugee camps, just for one curiosity, to understand the world politics, to understand the human condition in this 21st century, and then to see how Europe, nations, or world in response to this 68.5 million people, and course, we made a movie, and you know, it's just part of this kind of effort.
Could I ask, have you taken a deep interest yet in the Rohingya people in Myanmar and called Burma, flooding into Bangladesh? And this, I mean, it's not quite 1 million people, but it's a vast number of people. And I ask partly because I know so little about it. It's not much in our news, but there has been some. And it's staggering, the scope of it. It all seems to turn on their religious identity as Muslims, but I'm still trying to get my head around it. Is that on your list?
In the movie, you can see we approached it at that time only 200,000 refugees from Myanmar to Bangladesh, but after the movie finished, it's only a little bit over a year, there's another 700,000 people being cleaned out from Myanmar. They are all in Bangladesh. 10 days ago, or a little bit over 1 week ago, I was in there. I just want to say, same kind of curiosity, you know, how could this be the world's largest refugee camp? 900,000 people, about 1 million people, squeezed into a land maybe a little bit larger than Central Park. And so we have 3-4 cameramen with me, and they're still there, and we're shooting. You know, every day I was wake up in early morning, just see those footage sending to me. It's absolutely beyond our imagination. You know, it's in every aspect. Those Arabs, actually Muslims in Myanmar, which are being cleaned out by Buddhist society. And if you look at the, also went to Myanmar to see the people are so peaceful, very nice. But how could this happen? Then you go to Bangladesh, so these Muslims is not exactly the kind of Muslim we normally have in the news or in the picture, but those people are, they're just like Buddhists. They're very, very peaceful, kind, you know. I never met anybody in the refugee camps. You're shooting, you can talk to them, they never refuse you. They, you know, even in their home, it's called home, it's really tents, has nothing in there. The children are so beautiful, and they simply don't know why people are helping them, because they don't know it, they don't understand why people pay attention to them. You know, in such a condition, it's really, while I'm staying there, it destroys all my understanding about the situation, you know. They need help, they need help than anybody, because they basically are being forgotten by the world, even with such a tragic, because far from Europe, and they, you know, it's Asian people, it's just a matter of numbers, it's not really human being or something. But if you look at the children and look at every individual, they're just exactly the same as us. You know, they have beautiful mind, but they're not educated, of course. They're not privileged to have anything for generations. But they are very kind people, and they're maybe finest and kind people as part of human society, but being so badly damaged. And they're still staying there. The situation is not going to getting better. Every day is pouring, the waters come down. Could be for, you know, the whole season is water, underwater.
Yeah, the monsoon season has just begun.
Yes.
And meantime, they're building with the most unbelievable energy and purpose and teamwork.
Yes.
Sort of tent cities, incredibly indomitable people.
They're all capable, they're all willing to work, they all know how to survive, but of course not in the modern world. You know, they are still living in their own world.
But this is, I put this in one, this is the new mystery. Why a Buddhist society is expelling 1 million people because they're Muslims. with all the gifts and human talents and charm that they have. We don't understand that yet. The one thing we do understand, though, and don't comment on at all, and I want to just raise this as a puzzle, is we know where the Middle East refugees come from. They come from countries that the United States has been bombing for 30, 40 years. I mean, there's no great mystery about where the refugees come from in Pakistan, or in Afghanistan, or Iraq, or Syria. And it amazes me. I don't want to sound like anti-American or anything, but why doesn't Angela Merkel hold us responsible for a problem that she's trying to solve? The United States policy has everything to do with the refugee crisis in Europe. And people are being very polite about it. They never say, oh, by the way, would you stop the damn bombing in Afghanistan?
Yeah, I think basically they all on the same boat. You know, I think they all profited by what they're doing. Germans or Europe or Americans, they are on the same boat. You know, it has been like this for past a few hundred years. It's not, even they had a struggle in between themselves, but still, the capitalism, the globalization, you can clearly see they're so interconnected. You know, they could have argument, but still, you know, the values, the basic values, or the common beliefs are the same. So
I wonder about that.
You know, if you say those nations, if you name all those nations who sell the most weapons, of course, you can easily get a different kind of map. You know, who is doing all those arms and selling to whom? And you know, if you look at the economic interests and the political interests, then you will see very different map than this kind of geographic maps on you know, presented to limit the ordinary people. Economically, you know, all those powers have the same interests. You know, so even China or Russia have share so much basic interests with US or Europe. So you know, China has a big bought a lot of American how do you call this, money or national, you know, it's so much to do with also with national security, and so they all depend on each other in this struggle.
True, but I wonder, where you are in Berlin, is there not an argument, a recognizable argument between Angela Merkel's Germany taking in those refugees and our own government, Trump government, and in a certain way Obama before him and the Bushes before that, who have been driving the traffic in refugees? I don't know, there is a difference there, no?
On the number, of course, there's a difference, but if you look at the fundamental understanding about humanity, about the world politics, there's almost no difference. You know, even Germany took those refugees, which still, as some kind of strategic, have to do, because they still want to keep Europe as one family. You know, geographically, they cannot really refuse those refugees to be pushed away, like many other nations. They cannot afford it. Otherwise, the whole Europe world completely just has no base for this European Union. So, but still, even they took the refugees there, very small percentage, maybe less than 5%, can be really integrated into society. They still live in the camps. The camps is an unthinkable situation. You know, they will spend years in camps without knowing what's the future. You know, you're just sitting there. Yes, they bring you food, but very restricted. And also, if you see the recent policy, every nation started to change to turn into build fences, borders, and to create these obstacles for anybody to come to Europe. So there's not much difference, you know.
Do you have any hope for a borderless Europe?
No, it's not. I don't think so. It's not possible. You know,
why not?
Everything's go backwards because the world is not ready. You know, they only take advantage of borderless, but not bear responsibility of being borderless. You know, there's many things in the world will become more uneven. The poor become really poor. You know, the people unstable area creates a lot of unstable situation in the world level, and also environmental becomes so the situation becomes so bad. You know. It will, in the future, I think, near future, there will be more refugees come because the climate change, or you know, if you look at what happened in Puerto Rico, that's your nation, and if you have 300,000 people still have no light, come on, this is the United States. I visited Puerto Rico and see how people, you know, suffered, but it's hard to think it's part of the United States. So this is obvious, you know, the situation is going to get worse, and do we really prepare for this?
For how long? And when does the pendulum swing?
When we're going to talk about food and sex?
Soon. No, but I just wonder, we don't have to mention the President of the United States. There's so many other interesting things to talk about. But do you see what is called the right-wing populist wave continuing? Do you see it breaking? Do you see...
I don't see it as a surprise. You know, the day Trump was elected, I was on the airplane from Mexico border. I was shooting there, and I went to, in the airport, I see people started counting the tickets. So I have to take the plane midnight. I wake up, ask the flight attendant who win. He said, Trump. I have no surprise. You know, not like New York Times or those major right-wing or left-wing, you know, media. I proved it because I bet money with several people. I said Trump is going to win. So I win 1,000 some cash. You know, the same as Brexit. You know, the Britons it happened. You know, everybody said, oh, it's not going to happen. I know it's going to happen. You know, it's not I'm a genius. It's just I know when.
It helps to be a genius. I
see
leftists
have some kind of assumption. I know that that's going to be a problem. You know, because now we all blame the right wing or populist. But the problem is the left part. You know, you don't have enough intellectual argument to really support your cause. And you also you're on the same boat. You just like brothers, sisters, start blaming each other. But we have to think a little bit more profound and more philosophical.
But if somebody had asked you very simply, why do you think Trump's going to win on election night in 2016? How would you explain it?
Well, I have a long gamble history. I play blackjack. Not like I get into it, but I know he's going to win, but he did win, and I also win the money on it.
But can you explain it or not? In simple terms?
In simple terms, I even after he wins the election, this is, I don't know, almost 2 years, I don't see a really strong argument, you know, in in really critical thinking about what happened to this democratic society.
Thank you.
You know, there's no such a thing there. Or it's very rarely to see, but they just blame him because Russian or because, you know, that's not enough to come on, you know, it's far beyond that, so.
Okay. We'll get to sex and to food, but one more thing. I just wanted to say you have so much to teach, not only this room, but our country, not only about art, but about activism. And the beautiful thing about your career is that you do it all in one. When you're silent, you're teaching us. When you're speaking, you're teaching us. When you're with a camera, you're teaching us. When you're a sculptor, you're acting your role in the world. How do we learn to practice that?
I think if I talk about my experiences since I was born, since I have a conscience, I realize I'm just one person. You know, I'm an individual. I was being blamed or hated by the society because my family, you know, because my father was a poet and he's falsely accused, and the whole nation kind of against somebody who's innocent. So I have no illusion about the public. You know, I always act as my own, and I don't even care being recognized as an artist or whatever there. And that gave me a clear reason what to do and you know, to act on my own and to take the consequence. And that's all I can say about it.
You said to me in Beijing, country to wit ours that could produce Edward Snowden can't be all bad. And I said to you, well, a country that produces Ai Weiwei country, a society that produces Ai Weiwei, a tradition, a human tradition that produces Ai Weiwei can't be all bad. But how do the rest of us learn better and learn more, especially the artists among us, about how to be Edward Snowden?
I think to be yourself, to trust your very basic judgment about right or wrong. I think that's, and to make some noise, to speak out, to find your own language. I think that is, it's not to try to contribute to the society, but really to take care of your life and respect the life itself. You know, we only have to choose one chance, and we happen to be this moment, and to be this kind of condition. And there's so much you can do if you really just come back to yourself, and to not to worry so much about this kind of common, you know, what other people teaches you, or mainstream society has this kind of moral or structure or all kind of bullshit, I should say. And then maybe you do a little thing really right to yourself. I think that's very important, and that's the minimal thing we can do to respect our own life.
Yeah, I say this is very touching. It's like music to me. And I'm also hearing Boston's own Ralph Waldo Emerson. I don't know if you know Ralph Waldo Emerson, but he said many things, including invent a better mousetrap and the world will be a path to your door. But what he really said was, trust thyself. Every heart vibrates to that iron string. Trust thyself. He says, follow the gleam in your own mind from within. And whoso would be a man must be a nonconformist. But I think it's wonderful to hear it from your voice, from your experience, and from your art. Thank you. Now, what would you like to say about food, and then we'll get to the sex. The food here has been pretty remarkable.
Food here, well, I had a food in a restaurant or food in friends' home or families. The best things they offered is some kind of saved stew or something. You know, it's kind of like how do you say? This kind of saved stew. Yeah. Yeah, it's from the tradition of, how do you call this?
Portuguese.
Portuguese. So I had it also in Brazil, you know, and similar type. Which is fine. My son likes it a lot. My appetite cannot take it twice in 2 days. It make me feel not bit. It's not heavy, but I cannot digest it. So
it was such a pleasure to see your son last night. He's your first fan. Beautiful young man. Seems to have a great sense of humor.
He's very critical. He refused to come to here today. I feel sorry. I have to drag him to all these kind of events. You know, we were in Aspen and here. You know, it's a different crowd, but you know, all people loving art or important part of a society. But still, you see, the society is quite fragile. You know, most people doesn't care about those things. So, you know, you either feel you're very privileged, you know, to be with community and society has long history, tightly united in this kind of ideology or almost utopian type of. But still, you feel so. If you walk on another street, you know, like the tourist street, you feel, oh my God, this is really very different. You know, it's very completely different world. So you always have to adjust yourself in between, you know, different reality. Yeah.
So, what can we tell the people of Provincetown about sex? I think they know all.
I think people here are all expert on sex. You can easily tell. Mostly oversexed.
So, what should we talk about the next time I meet you?
We talk about politics.
More or less of politics?
Yeah, more.
More? Is there anything we want to say before we're done about politics?
Well, we talk about it. No, we don't talk about politics. We talk about environment. We talk about animals. We talk about there's so many things we can talk about.
Yeah. We've reached a point even on the radio in the States where politics is the last thing you want to talk about. I'd much rather talk about art or literature or. Right?
Well, the art is not something you can really talk about. You know, that's why I'm still making this stupid art, because certain things it's very hard to talk about.
Is there one person with a burning question for Ai Weiwei before we're done? Think hard about it. One person. Are you ready? Are you the one? Try it. Go for it.
Yeah, but one burning one, and I guess I should know this, is why did they let you out of prison, and why did you get your passport back? Are you are your blogs now available in China again?
Any information related to me is not available in China. They even have this technology. Somebody pasted an image of backside of my, a photo. They can identify it as him. So even you Google translating, you're asking, you type in Ai Weiwei, or jump out of words called that fat guy. You know, they have to deal with that name, but they cannot pick that name. They will see the fat guy. I'm not so fat. I already can said it over here. When I traveled to Washington, D.C., I said, oh my God, this is very impossible. People are a bit heavier than me, other people. But here, since people are taking care of themselves very well. And why I got released, that's a mystery. And I would wake up in the middle of the night to think, they told me they will put me in jail for certain years. When I come out, certainly my son will never recognize me. that was a heavy moment when they tell me that. But suddenly I got released. You know, maybe I have to go thanks Germany or international politicians have been giving pressure to Chinese government, but do they care? I don't really know. It seems they don't care that much. Also, someone said because my father, you know, he was exiled for 20 years, so I have no idea. Or maybe I'm a lucky one. It's just like why I know Trump will become a president. You know, I just you know.
And can you cross the border? Can you travel?
I can. They keep telling me I can freely travel back. They guarantee my safety. But of course, who can trust them?
I would not put in a good word for the Chinese government, but I would just point out that there's always this element of paradox. 2008 was the year of your work on the Sichuan earthquake. It was also the year in which China proudly presented themselves in the Olympics in your Bird's Nest Stadium. So there's always a double thing. In our country, we all know Edward Snowden. There's no sense of humor. There's no paradox. There's no two-way street around Edward Snowden. He's, you know, if he steps onto American soil, he will be. God knows what will happen, but he is considered an enemy of the state, and there's no humor about it. There's no.
Yeah, I think that's a problem with here. You have a very different society. You have CIA, you have FBI. You know, even President Trump would skeptical about the situation.
Yeah.
So then you see the Snowden is a very good example. You know, you mentioned it twice. I really appreciate it. I mean, if we think this young American person is a really American product and trust his own intuition, and he did everything good for the nation, for the people. But why this nation nobody, you know, stand out to say just let him alone? You know, you know why he has to stay in Russia? That's against all his beliefs. So you can see our people doesn't care. You know, here it's really task for the liberals. Yeah. I think the liberals, many of them want to put him in jail for good. You know, you see this government, even Democratic, if they win, they certainly will also put him in jail.
Yeah.
So that's why I said, you know, even Democratic or Republicans, they are on the same boat. You know?
Michael Roberts, you have a last question. It was your bright idea to put us up here.
I just want to say thank you very, very much for this wonderful